Although the social intervention program started in 2016, the special intervention, which has 350 billion naira for recurrent and capital at 150 billion naira, totaling 500 billion naira for 2017, is still generating discussions.
Last year, the funds was not fully drawn down. By the time there was supplementary budget, there was a reduction in the amount voted for social intervention program. Last year, initial budget was 500 billion as well. There was a bit of reduction through supplementary budget. But this year, again, another 500 billion has been voted. Our expectation is that picking up from lessons from the last year, there will be, more pace to implementation. Lessons would have been learned, and any challenge that they faced last year would have been, sorted by now. We expect that they will do more in terms of implementing this aspect of the budget.
They not necessarily appreciate really what that does. There is arguments to be made that what is all these programs all about. But my own take is that I believe that Nigeria deserves some form of social intervention programs. You'll be shocked that given the demography of this country and the population distribution, a figure of 5,000 can make a significant difference in some families' lives. If you want to know that, if you look at the misery index that's growing worse month on month all throughout 2015 into 2016, there must be some form of ways in which you help the less fortunate in the society to feel a sense of governance around him. In some societies, they use tax credit. In some other societies, they pay it through educational fund or whatever. But because we haven't built such an integrated framework of structure, government finds ways and means through local governments or state governments or agencies, and they call all that under social intervention programs.
539 billion naira for power, housing and works is also deemed insufficient.
And when you break it to the component parts, power, housing ministry, each is a powerful ministry, nowhere near. Take power, for example. What the multi-year tariff order allows for TCN, that is the Transmission Company of Nigeria, which is still under government care, it's over 450 billion. What's provided for under the budget is just a little bit above 40 billion naira. So those are issues, and these go to infrastructure. And if you don't get infrastructure right, we will continue this, what I always call sell oil and spend economics.
A new item on the budget is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, allocated 2.5 billion naira.
And I'm optimistic, given the fact that it's being driven by the Vice President, who is the chairman of the economic team. And there's also the complementary aspect of it, which is the Enabling Environment Business Council, which is also being chaired by the Vice President. All these, have a potential positive impact on the economy from the point of view, first, of ensuring sustainability of policy, of ensuring credibility of policy, and of ensuring an improvement in the investment climate. I think those things will bring a lot of value to the economy.
It's just an isolation of what is already between recurrent and capital expenditure. So the definite movement towards increasing capital expenditure that they intend to fund it, which they believe will create a form of stimulus and trickle-down effect. But a trickle-down effect principle is, again, is open to debate given the real challenges you find. But I think what the budget was trying to do was, one, to be a dealer in hope, to try to put some structure around the thinking of government in terms of how they want to approach recovery and growth. Don't forget that we are talking about a country that's achieved a 7% growth rate in 2010, 2011. So whatever we do now will just be a recovery. So there are two things now. First of all, stop the bleeding. Second is start to recover fully well, and then we can talk about growth. So there's nothing really about budget 2017 that should, you cannot use the word budget 2017 and growth in the same sentence. Budget 2017 will be helping to consolidate on stopping the bleeding, as it were.
And just like 2016, the budget is proposed to run on a deficit, this time about 2.3 trillion naira.
Our debt profile is not sustainable. And that is what is reflecting in the deficit. In this budget, I think 1.8 trillion was earmarked for the issue of debt. As we look at it, that could be close to 35% of government revenue. Could be about 70% of our capital budget. So it's a major issue that we need to address. And one important thing that we need to do regarding the debt profile and debt management is the cost at which government is borrowing, especially from the domestic financial market. The cost is outrageous. If government is borrowing at 18%, at 19%, at 20%, first, it puts a lot of burden on the finances of government, just as it's being reflected in the budget now. I'm talking of 1.8 trillion. Then it has a serious crowding out effect on the private sector. I mean, if the bank can buy treasury bills and buy government bonds at 18%, why would they lend to an entrepreneur? Why would they lend to an entrepreneur?
Business people propose a solution to the somewhat scary deficit.
Deficit budgeting is not by itself a bad thing. Because if government has to go borrowing, they have to go find somewhere funding it. But the big challenge is always, do you have a clear sight of where the repayment is going to come from? I know they will look towards taxes, but the tax rates have not changed, which is good news, because already I think Nigerians are overtaxed in the sense that, but the tax bracket is getting wider, and I must give kudos to FIRS, because I think they've brought in close to 700,000 more companies into the tax bracket. That's what government should continue to do. Instead of taxing the few compliant people to death, widen the tax base so that others who are currently outside it can come in, so that we can get funding. But what is still more critical than anything else is you must try and boost employment. And it's the capital projects, the infrastructure, investment in infrastructure, roads, airports, railways. You just get Nigeria working again, young people employed.
Interesting figures in the budget, some received positively, others negatively. However, one area of general agreement comes in the need for high percentage of implementation, with 2016 used as an example.
Based on the last statement from the Minister of Finance, she says that the capital component of the 2016 budget was fully funded to the tune of 1.2 trillion, which is the highest we have seen in terms of both allocation and in terms of funding the capital component of that budget. This is the statement from the Minister of Finance. But we can only wait for the budget performance report to then show the level of implementation, the level of funding, because even if she says, I've released this amount of money to fund capital projects, does not automatically translate to the fact that the contractors will receive that amount, or they would have performed to the extent that they would be paid that money. So there are lots of factors that we play into determining the level of implementation.
Often we have a lot of debate around the federal government budget, year in, year out. But we hardly have debates on the state government budgets. We hardly discuss the local government budgets. And these are governments that are even closer to the people than the federal government. So we also need to review our engagement. Much as it's good to engage the federal government to discuss the expenditure and the appropriation, it's also very important that we also engage at the level of the states and at the level of the federal government.
Nigerians have a budget and expectations are high, so implementation of the budget will be what everyone will be looking out for. Well, that's it on this episode of Big Story. Thank you for watching, but let's continue talking on our social media platforms. I'm Ine Thompson.